Level 1. $1,000. The notification comes on a Thursday. Not a dramatic Thursday. A regular one. You're in the drive-thru. The total is $11.40. You tap your card. It goes through. You pull forward. You don't think about the $1,000 sitting on the card you just used because $1,000 doesn't feel like debt yet. It feels like a tab. Something you're running temporarily. Something that will resolve itself naturally the way small problems do when you don't look at them directly. You tell yourself you'll pay it off next month. You have said this for 3 months. The minimum payment is $25. You pay the minimum. The interest rate is 22.99%. You did not read that part carefully when you applied. The sign-up bonus was 40,000 points. You focused on that. This is how it starts. Not with a crisis. Not with a decision that feels like a decision. With a drive-thru and a tap and a Thursday that feels like every other Thursday. The first rule. Debt at $1,000 doesn't feel like debt. It feels like flexibility. That is the most dangerous thing about it. Level 2. $5,000. You are not sure exactly when it became $5,000. That's the part nobody tells you. It doesn't arrive in a single moment. It arrives as a series of completely reasonable individual decisions that you would make again if presented with them in isolation. The car repair that couldn't wait. The medical copay. The flight home for a family thing. The 3 months where groceries went on the card because the account was thin and payday was far. You check the balance now the way you check the weather. Casually. Routinely. Without real alarm. $5,000 feels manageable the way a slow leak feels manageable. The house is still standing. The floor is just a little soft in one corner. A coworker named Tasha mentions she has $6,000 on her card. She says it without shame, almost as a point of connection. You realize that somewhere in the last year, consumer debt has become the thing everyone has and nobody discusses and all of you are quietly treating as normal. This is the normalization. This is how $5,000 stops feeling like a warning and starts feeling like weather. Inevitable. Ambient. Everyone's dealing with it. The minimum payment is now $112. You pay it automatically. You don't think about it leaving. That's the point. That's also the trap. Level 3. $15,000. Something has shifted. You can feel it without being able to name it exactly. The debt is no longer ambient. It has weight now. Not crushing weight. But present weight. The kind you notice when you try to move. You want to take a trip. You run the numbers. The trip costs $1,400. You don't have $1,400 liquid. You could put it on the card. You do the math on what that actually costs at your interest rate over 8 months of minimum payments. The $1,400 trip becomes a $1,740 trip. You go anyway, because the alternative, staying home while everyone else goes, feels like punishment for a crime you haven't fully confessed to yet. This is what $15,000 in debt does to your decision-making. It doesn't stop you. It just makes everything cost more than the price tag says. Your minimum payments across 2 cards total $340 a month. $340 a month that builds nothing, earns nothing, returns nothing. It is the financial equivalent of running to stay in place. You are working, every month, for free, for the bank. The second rule. At $15,000, you are no longer using debt. Debt is using you. The minimum payment is the mechanism. Your income is the product. Level 4. $30,000. You don't tell people the number. You wouldn't say it out loud the way you wouldn't say certain other things out loud in certain rooms. $30,000 lives in the private part of your financial life, the part you keep separate from your personality, your social presence, the version of yourself you present to the world. Your credit score has dropped 40 points. Not collapsed. Dropped. You notice it when you apply for an apartment and they run the check and there's a pause before the approval that didn't used to be there. A friend named Jordan is buying a house. You watch the process from the outside, the pre-approval, the offer, the closing photos on Instagram, and you feel something complicated that takes you a few days to identify. It isn't envy exactly. It's the recognition that Jordan and you are the same age, roughly the same income, and are standing in completely different financial realities. And you understand, without anyone saying it, that the $30,000 is part of why. The debt has started reshaping your decisions in ways you don't always catch in real time. You didn't apply for the better job because the background check felt risky. You didn't bring up the lease negotiation because you needed the landlord's goodwill. You stay quiet in rooms where you used to speak. Debt has a social weight that the balance statements don't capture. At $30,000, you are paying approximately $620 a month in minimum payments. That is $7,440 a year. That is a used car. That is 4 months of groceries. That is the beginning of an emergency fund you do not have. It is leaving your account every month and becoming someone else's profit. Level 5. $50,000. You stop opening certain emails. Not all of them. Just the ones from specific senders with specific subject lines. You know what they say. You have read enough of them to know. Reading another one won't change the number. It will only make the number feel more real than you currently need it to feel. This is the invisibility stage. The debt is too large to casually minimize and too overwhelming to confront directly, so you build a careful architecture of not quite looking. You know the approximate total. You do not know the exact total. The difference between those two things is a psychological buffer you have constructed without realizing you constructed it. $50,000 in consumer debt at an average interest rate of 20% costs you $10,000 a year in interest alone. Not principal. Interest. You are paying $833 a month simply to stay at $50,000. To actually reduce the balance, you need to pay beyond that. The math at minimum payment stretches the payoff timeline past a decade. The third rule. At $50,000, the debt has its own momentum. It no longer needs your participation to grow. It compounds while you sleep the same way wealth does, except in the opposite direction. Level 6. $75,000. You consolidate. A personal loan, lower rate, single payment, clean slate feeling. The credit cards zero out. You feel the relief the way you feel cool air after a long time in a hot room. Immediate. Physical. Real. You do not cut the cards. Within 14 months, 2 of them carry balances again. The consolidation loan is still running. You now have the loan and the cards. The total is $81,000. You have done what a significant portion of people who consolidate do. You treated the symptom. The system that produced the debt is unchanged. The behavior that built it, the small consistent decisions, the minimum payment mindset, the spending that runs slightly ahead of income, none of that was addressed by the new loan. The new loan just bought time. Time you spent the same way you spent the last 5 years. A credit counselor named Diane sits across from you at a small desk in an office that smells like recycled air and quiet desperation. She has seen this before. She sees it every day. She does not say that. She pulls out a worksheet. She is kind. She is practical. She starts with income. She is the first person who has ever sat with you in the actual numbers without flinching. You feel, unexpectedly, something close to gratitude. Level 7. $100,000. You are sitting at a kitchen table on a Sunday night. In front of you are 3 statements, a legal pad, and a cup of coffee that went cold an hour ago. You have been here for 2 hours. You are not avoiding the numbers tonight. Tonight you are in them completely, because something shifted last week, a conversation, a number you saw, a moment of clarity that arrived without warning the way clarity sometimes does, and you understood that the architecture of not quite looking has to come down. The total is $103,400. You write it in the center of the legal pad. You circle it. You look at it for a long time. Here is what $100,000 in debt actually is. It is not a moral judgment. It is not evidence of stupidity or weakness or failure of character. It is the mathematical result of a system you were handed without instructions, a culture that normalizes borrowing, an industry that profits from minimum payments, and a decade of small decisions that felt reasonable in isolation and catastrophic in aggregate. It is also, and this is the part that takes the longest to believe, solvable. Not quickly. Not painlessly. Not without restructuring things you have built your life around. But solvable. The fourth rule: the debt did not build itself overnight. It will not dissolve overnight. But the same mechanism that grew it, consistency, small repeated decisions, compounding over time, is the exact mechanism that dismantles it. The direction changes. The engine is the same. You pick up the pen. You start with the highest interest rate. You write the balance. You write the minimum. You write what happens if you add $200 a month above the minimum. The payoff date moves. Not enough. You find $150 more. The date moves again. It is Sunday night. The coffee is cold. The number on the legal pad has not changed, but something else has. The number is no longer a weight you are carrying in the dark. It is a problem on a page, and problems on pages have solutions. You didn't get here because you were reckless. You got here because nobody sat down with you early enough and showed you what the compounding looks like in both directions. What it looks like when it works for you. What it looks like when it works against you. The notification comes on a Thursday. A regular one. The same drive-through. The same $11.40. But this time you pause before you tap. Not with shame, with information. With the knowledge of exactly where that tap leads if you let it run. You tap. You pull forward. But the number on the legal pad is in your chest now. And that is the beginning of the only thing that has ever actually worked. Not a dramatic Thursday. Just a different one. If this video described your life at any level, you are not alone and you are not done. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. The next video might be the one that changes the direction entirely.